7 o'clock, Washington is one of many states across the country administering the coronavirus vaccine for the first time today. We'll tell you when we could see it happen in Spokane.
Washington's 12 electors voted unanimously to back the state's pick for the 2020 election.
Hopefully in 4 years, the Electoral College will go back to being a little more boring.
And things got emotional for our Secretary of State.
We are looking at a little bit of light snow coming down in parts of town. I'm going to let you know when that snow picks up and how much you can expect today.
Up with KREM begins now.
Well, if you were given the chance, would you get the coronavirus vaccine? This morning, we want to hear from you. You can vote right now on our KREM2 Twitter page. We're going to be checking on that throughout the morning to see what you think. Now, it seems like we've got a bit of an increase this morning, mostly on people saying, I haven't decided yet, but a slight increase in people saying no. But the majority has held pretty much all morning long, with most of you saying, yes, you would get it when it's available. I do think it's interesting, Jeremy, because we have all talked about, there are still studies that need to be conducted. There are still questions that need to be asked how it impacts kids. We'll talk this morning about the impact that it could be in terms of studying pregnant women. So I think there are some questions, but overwhelmingly the science points to, that everything's fine.
Yeah, so here's your takeaway as the scientist on the screen right now. Your takeaway this morning is that if you are a healthy individual who's not a child and not pregnant, you don't have anything to worry about. Really, your only possible concern would be if you're allergic to many other medicines. And the reason the rest of us need to get it is so that we can get to that herd immunity number, and then we don't have to force people like pregnant women or children or people who might be allergic to some part of that vaccine to get vaccinated. That's how we all come together to help each other. It's very similar to wearing a mask.
We've got plenty of updates for you coming up on some of those specific details here in Washington as well. But hey, Jeremy, let's get to the weather that we brought you here for, the meteorological weather.
Oh, man, all right. Sometimes you just get wrapped up in the science and you're like, hey, it is science. We have scientific method. We test these things. Just because it gets a different name doesn't mean anything has changed in the testing process. But this morning, well, this is a wild one. Weather can be very interesting at times. Parts of town already seeing snow come down, other parts not so much just yet, but that snow is moving in. And with temperatures hovering right around freezing, it is going to be a dense, heavy kind of snow as it starts coming down. You can see we got our first little swath that scooted through, heavier at times, but here comes another push of moisture. Always interesting running through that radar blind spot coming out of the Cascades, trying to watch how it's going to go. But here's what happens. We get the moisture and we kind of hang in it for the next few hours. It comes down really heavy just after that morning commute. That's when we should get some of that to pile up on the ground. And then as we scoot through the remainder of the day, it starts winding down across the region. So as that snow winds down, temperatures climb. We're in the upper 30s later on this afternoon. Really, the only reason it snows is because that snow pulls down cold air from the atmosphere overhead. Once it's on the ground, melts. And we're talking a slushy kind of afternoon.
We'll see you back here in a few minutes, Jeremy, for your full forecast. 7:03 now on your Tuesday morning. Today, the first COVID vaccine will be given in Washington. Almost 11 months ago, we reported the very first confirmed case of COVID in the United States in Western Washington. And now, in just a few hours, the first dose will be given at the UW Medical Center in Seattle.
Now, a group of frontline employees will receive the Pfizer vaccine today at 11. The employees are nurses, doctors, environmental services staff, and respiratory care therapists. Other healthcare workers will have access to the vaccine this Thursday. UW received 3,900 doses yesterday morning. The same number will be shipped to Spokane. As of right now, the health department has not confirmed which providers will be getting the first doses or when they will arrive.
This week, 62,400 doses will be delivered throughout Washington state, but where exactly are they going? Take a look at your screen. You can get a good idea. We have confirmed there are about 8,700 coming to Eastern Washington, with the most coming to Spokane County. More than 10,000 will land in King County, and there are about 500,000 people in the first group to get vaccinated. They'll be known as Phase 1A. That group includes high-risk healthcare workers, patients, first responders, and staff at long-term care facilities.
And over in Idaho, they're on track to receive at least 13,000 doses of the coronavirus vaccine. Now, the first shipment is set to arrive by the end of this week. The vaccine distributed to 7 local public health districts. The locations were chosen based on the number of healthcare workers in each district. Now, similar to Washington, healthcare staff, COVID patients, and long-term care facility workers are among the first to receive a shot. The state expects to get another 89,000 vaccines in the second and third shipments.
And with that COVID-19 vaccine officially in Washington state, one place we all might see some doses available to the public soon is Fred Meyer. Nicole Hernandez joining us live now to explain what we know. Good morning, Nicole.
Good morning, Joshua. So eventually getting the COVID-19 vaccine could be as easy as literally just walking into the doors of our local Fred Meyer. Now that's not happening yet, but Fred Meyer does say that they are planning on giving out the COVID-19 vaccine. They're planning on working with our local and state health departments to make that happen. Of course, timing on when this will happen depends on the government's vaccine rollout plan. In their statement, though, a company pharmacist with the company said that the vaccines here could happen in the, quote, very near future. Until then, of course, you can still get antibody tests done here at our local Fred Meyer stores. And Fred Meyer isn't the only big company that is promising those COVID-19 vaccines as easy access. Both Walgreens and CVS said that they are also planning on making those COVID-19 vaccines happen locally. Live in Spokane, I'm Nicole Hernandez.
Now, as we have reported before, once you get your first shot, you're not immediately immune to the coronavirus. As we can see, the Pfizer vaccine requires doses be taken 3 weeks apart, and Moderna requires 4 weeks between each of their shots. Now, it's common for vaccines to require 2 or more doses. Chickenpox vaccine, MMR, all requiring multiple doses. The tetanus shot, by the way, requires 3 doses. People can also expect some side effects when it comes to these COVID vaccines, including fatigue, muscle pain, fever, and even some chills for a day or two after receiving the shot. And some experts, including the researchers at the University of Michigan, worry that these symptoms, along with other factors, are part of the big reason why 30% of the population might not be getting a second dose of their COVID-19 vaccine.
Now here's a timeline of what's next for those receiving the vaccine this week. Now the people who get vaccinated today will get their second dose about 3 weeks from now. Pfizer's vaccine is only approved for people 16 years and older. Pregnant women and children are exempt. But by the middle of next month, studies will look into whether the vaccine is safe for them too. 50 million are expected to be vaccinated by the end of the month. The question a lot of people Google today is, when can I get the vaccine? Now, for most of us, probably not until at least next spring. The government says the general population can likely begin getting those shots in March. Officials say they have purchased enough doses to vaccinate every American by the end of June. But that relies on other companies being as successful as Pfizer in getting the FDA's approval. And Moderna, well, they're up next. The FDA advisory panel hears their request for emergency use this Thursday.
And as Dana Marie mentioned, Moderna being next up in the hot seat in that race to deliver a coronavirus vaccine. As U.S. officials say, they are planning to ship about 6 million doses as soon as Friday, pending approval of its vaccine candidate. An FDA committee is set to review Moderna's vaccine on Thursday, and it's the same committee that granted emergency use authorization for Pfizer's vaccine.
And healthcare workers around the U.S. have already started getting that coronavirus vaccine. Yesterday was an emotional day for people on the front lines who received the first vaccines in the country.
The energy in that room as we were all waiting to get the vaccine was the most excited I've seen anybody in so long.
I hope this marks the beginning to the end of a very painful time in our history.
Nursing home residents are expected to start receiving vaccinations next week. And this morning, we do want you to join the conversation. Head over to the KREM2 Twitter to vote in our live poll. Like we said earlier, we're seeing a variety of responses here. Above 60% of you this morning are saying yes. Some people are saying that they haven't decided yet exactly on what they're going to do about that. But of course, we're getting a variety of opinions this morning about the vaccine, and we're going to be following all the new information that comes out around that as well.
Meanwhile, Washington electors have cast their votes for the 2020 presidential election.
As you can see, this is getting me today.
Our Secretary of State opened up about how difficult the past few months have been.
And coming up at 8 o'clock, we'll verify some claims circulating the internet about the costs of the coronavirus vaccine.